Thank you all for joining us in our last keynote lecture of the day. Let's give the warmest welcome to Sandra Brown, Vice Chancellor for Research of the University of California, San Diego, who will be sharing with us the lecture, Women Leadership in Higher Education. Please be welcome, Sandra Brown. Before starting, let's see Sandra Brown profile video.
Sandra Ann Brown, PhD, is a distinguished professor of psychology and psychiatry and Vice Chancellor for Research at UC San Diego. She leads the Office of Research Affairs, charged with creating research opportunities, enhancing the research experience, developing tools, and training to improve research administration and supporting and promoting university innovations. Under her leadership, UC San Diego has achieved a decade of billion-dollar investments in research and ranking as one of the nation's premier public research universities. She designed and implemented major transformations of both research structures and processes and built multi-institutional, multinational collaborative research programs. She launched the Office of Innovation and Commercialization to accelerate UC San Diego-related startup companies that are now ranked second in the nation and transformed programming to help prepare trainees for diverse research careers of the future. She has been the PI of 26 federally funded grants, including the current National Consortium on Alcohol and Neurodevelopment in Adolescents, NCANDA, and Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development, ABCD study, which is the largest longitudinal study of youth development ever funded by NIH. We are very pleased to be connected with you today. Welcome, Sandra Brown.
La cámara.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Brown. I'm so pleased to join you today, and I want to, in particular, thank Neil Hernandez-Gross and President Garza, as well as the committee for this kind invitation today. I met Professor Hernandez-Gross a number of years ago, and I was so delighted to receive this invitation and to share with you some thoughts about women in leadership. But let me start first with a quote from your president. Next slide, please. President Garza said, "Our new educational model, exclusive, worldwide, activates and boosts your innovation capacity and allows you not only to stay current, but also to be an agent of change in unprecedented times in which education is experiencing experiencing a complete transformation." I think this is such an important quote about who we are and what we are in academia these days. And the Tec de Monterrey is clearly at the forefront of this. As you heard in that really charming introduction, thank you, my research has been funded by a number of different federal agencies in the United States, and I want to acknowledge them upfront and also make clear that I have no conflict of interest in the regarding information that I'm going to be sharing today. So this is a critical juncture. Next slide, please. It's a critical juncture in higher education, and we really need the most competent, the brightest people, the entire workforce to be empowered. So why should we care if women are actually in the workforce or in leadership in academia? Well, we know from a multitude of studies now that large organizations with 30% or more women on their boards outperform other organizations, and that an increase of 10% of women in the leaders or partner positions in these organizations has been shown to produce an increase of 10% in profits. Women in leadership, we know, aids in the recruitment process, especially if you're trying to recruit women and underrepresented minorities, and also is critical in academia in retaining the workforce. Also importantly, having this type of diversity is shown to be associated with decreases in burnout, increases in job satisfaction, and longevity. So what do we know about disparities, gender disparities? Well, we know that they're pervasive. And the next slide shows that in the United States, women working full-time earn on average 82% compared to their male counterparts in the very same jobs. In the US, only 1 in 4 companies has advancing women in leadership is one of their top 10 priorities. In India, for example, women hold 8% of management roles and only 2% of CEO roles. In Japan, women hold 18% of section chief senior positions and only 11% of director positions. And in the EU, women hold 19% of executive positions and 8% of CEOs. Now, these are in countries where large portions of women, much larger than are represented in the leadership statistics, are represented in the workforce. Well, that's in general in the workforce. What do we know about academia, women in academia? Well, if you look across universities, according to the Chronicles of Higher Education, the majority of non-tenured lecturer positions are held by women. But when we move to the secure tracks, the more prestigious academic tracks, there are about 44% of women who are in tenure track positions. There are more at the assistant professor level, 52% relative to 48% males. But as you move up in the academic process up to full professor, only 36% of full professors are women. Well, that's women who are faculty. What about women who are in the administrative roles in academia? Well, there, only 30% of college presidents are women, and only 5% are underrepresented minorities. About 50% of department chairs are women, but isn't that a remarkable discrepancy between 50% at the department chair level, but only 30% at the presidential level? And at all of those levels, on average, gender pay gaps still exist in the academic community. Next slide, please. These discrepancies in academia are even more pronounced when we look in the science and technology and engineering and medicine fields. For example, 15% of engineering faculty are women. 14% of computer science faculty are women. 70% of tenured male faculty have children, but only 44% of tenured women. It's really striking, these differences in the areas that really are so critical to the economic future of our countries, and actually the global community. Well, what do we know about Mexico? Are these differences still prevalent in Mexico, or has Mexico somehow shown greater leadership than the rest of the world? Well, the good news is in Mexico that there are as many women as men at the undergraduate level getting their college degrees, just as many women as men. Used to not be the case 10 years ago. And at the graduate level, there are just as many women as are men in those master's and PhD programs. But when we look at the areas of women and men in the workforce, if we look in business, then we see that men and women are about equally represented in those degree programs. But in STEM fields, women are far less represented than men. So even though the same proportion are in undergraduate and graduate programs, if you look within the STEM fields, women are much less represented. There was a study done recently by The Economist that demonstrated that increasing the women in the workforce to the rates of men in the workforce would add $800 billion to the Mexican GDP. That is pretty substantial, I would say. So that's the good news. In Mexico, there is some bad news or some challenges yet to be addressed. For example, only 75% of women who actually have college degrees have a paid job, are out in the workforce being paid for the work that they're capable of doing. And when we look within the working age range for adults, 44% of women are in the workforce compared to 78% of men. So there's still a huge discrepancy, which means that we are not using all of the talent that we have in our populations in the best interest of the economic development of our country. And in fact, only 1 in 200,000 women in the workforce in Mexico will move to more senior leadership positions, such as being promoted to a vice president. Just as in the United States, we see that gender gap in terms of pay. That is, women in Mexico are earning on average 22% less than men in the workforce for the same, for comparable work. Well, as a woman, what can you expect? In this slide that shows, actually it's an individual jumping off a cliff head first into a very popular place in Mexico, I will add. And I've been there, and I'm embarrassed to say that I've done the very same thing, although not gone head first. What can women expect? They can expect a challenge in work-life balance. On average, women still hold the majority of family responsibilities in the home and the child care responsibilities in the home. And so it is very challenging for women to move up in ranks and be in positions where they may be called on to work longer hours or off hours in order to be successful in their career. Women can, however, expect a sense of self-efficacy or self-confidence the more experience that they get. That is, that women who move into higher and higher levels in academia or in administrative leadership positions in academia come to feel that they are more efficacious, they're more effective, and they can be more effective as they move up in these ranks. And it's not necessarily that moving into a higher level is only under the purview of those women who have that confidence to begin with, but it is the experience of successfully solving problems that builds that sense of self-confidence. It's not unreasonable still in this era to expect that there will be barriers. There may be times when your ideas are not as appreciated as others, or you aren't called on to solve problems in quite the same way. So it is important for women to attend to and engage in the learning communities that are available in the academic environment. There are often opportunities for leadership training. Women need to take advantage of them. And men in leadership need to nominate women for those training programs. I think personally, it is also important to identify successful women as role models and to talk with them about opportunities and skills that you can develop that will make you ready for those opportunities when they come forward. And finally, I think it is important for women to be authentic. That is, not to hide who they are or to pretend like they are a man in a situation, but rather be genuine and sincere. And these types of things make a difference in terms of others' respect for you as you move up in the academic status, either as a faculty member or as an administrator. So it is the case that leadership is based on skills. Success in the academic environment is based on skills. So what are some of these skills? Well, if we look across studies, we can identify 8 areas, 8 types of skills that are very useful for leaders in the academic environment. And I want to call those out because these are things that everyone can learn. And in this case, women are no different than men. You can learn to develop financial skills and an understanding of business operations. You can develop skills to build collaboration and collaborative teams. You can play a role in supporting new leaders in your academic environment, in your community. And that puts you in a position of appreciation for those individuals as they start to move up the academic ladder as well. It's really important to have good communication skills, to be able to send your message clearly and succinctly and with sincerity. All of those components are important in communication. And I will say that that's true as an academic leader, not just for the positive things that we face, that is the kinds of programs that we develop, but it's equally true for dealing with the challenging situations. Being clear, being straightforward, but speaking with an authentic voice and with compassion is an important part of the communication process. It is also important not just to think about the success that's needed today with an immediate problem, but to have a vision and develop a strategic plan for the future and to be able to manage the change process to get to that longer term goal. These are very standard skills in higher education. And I would say today, just as we're talking about enhancing opportunities for women in academic leadership, it's important that women have a commitment to diversity, all types of diversity, and that women support other women, and that women support men as well, that we not discriminate in the process. Vice versa, men should be just as supportive of women as they are for their male counterparts. Finally, I think one thing that often gets overlooked in higher education is the value of intellectual curiosity, of being interested in the things that people are doing, the new ideas that are coming forward. Because from those new ideas, you may develop strategies yourself that you think will enhance your university or the functioning and the role that you're in. So a couple of actions. These are the skills. What are some of the actions that women can take in higher education to help build leadership? So success includes understanding the policies and procedures and being respectful of them, adhering to them. It keeps you in alignment with your institution's goals. Secondly, recognizing and being respectful of the authority of others. If you would wish to garner respect yourself, then you should be applying that respect to others in your leadership teams. It helps them optimize their performance. A particular action that I think is important for women is to be willing to step outside the box, to take risks, to be innovative, and to be flexible, so that through this process of taking calculated risks, reasonable risks, provoking changes in systems, and doing so in a flexible but respectful way, that we can make important transformations in universities, especially with regard to the distribution of resources across genders and across minorities. I will also say that to be successful as an academic leader, you need to show commitment. You need to use your abilities to share with others, to lead others, to perform challenging technical tasks of which you're capable of, and to not be afraid to share your conceptual solutions and the framework from which one might consider new alternatives. This kind of commitment to action is very important in others developing confidence in your leadership style. To do so, you really need to be proactive. If you're always in a reactive mode, waiting till someone asks you to do something, as opposed to leading with an opportunity to offer when it's something that you know you could be successful at, then that would put you in a one-down position. So be proactive. It's also the case that in any large bureaucracy, whether it's academia or a Fortune 500 company, conflict is inevitable because there are other people who have commitment. There are other people who have authority. There are other people who are willing to take risks. And so conflict is normal. It's inevitable, I think. And what you want to do is to use it productively. That is, you want to take those situations where there are challenges and see if you can lead collectively to solutions that, and compromises in some cases, that will be appreciated by all. Oftentimes, it's not the end point, but the process that makes the difference about people's long-term confidence in your ability to lead. I always say, tell the truth. Some people avoid saying the truth, but I think telling the truth, but with compassion, is an important skill to develop. It's an important action to take. So even when you have bad news to share, you share it with compassion. Even when the solution to a conflict doesn't meet the expectations of all who are involved, if you do that with compassion, and you do that with transparency, again, respect for your leadership will unfold. And I have learned that one of the most important things that you can do as a leader, even when you think you know the solution, is to listen first. To listen with compassion, and listening puts you in a position then of achieving both the opportunity to achieve both individual and organizational goals. That communication founded on your willingness to listen means that others will avail themselves more of your thoughts, your insight, and your strategic vision. I think it's important to value the people with whom you work. People fill roles, but they're much more than roles. People have positions of power, but they're much more than the power. And it is those relationships that are so critical in the long run. The relationships create an opportunity for you to empower others and for others to empower you. These are actions that we can take as academic leaders, not just women, but academic leaders. But it is very important that women be attentive to these actions. And finally, I have to say, check your attitude. And what I mean by that is what's important to you may not be important to other people. You might be the smartest person in the room, but you still have the same responsibilities to listen and to learn from others and to operate as a team and as a partner. So it's important not always to put your own interest before the interest of others, but to attain group success, to attain leadership, collective success. So these kinds of actions, I think, are things that people can actually do as a faculty member, as a junior leader at an academic institution, or in a business setting. And they help you develop the skills that we just spoke about before, give you opportunities to learn about managing financial situations, solving problems, making strategic changes for businesses. These are the types of things that these actions lead to the development of those skills. Nobody is born with those skills automatically. They are developed. So by taking these actions and practicing, we develop the skills. I will say that in some societies, and this is very common in the United States, that men may have more opportunity to act and develop those skills earlier on. It doesn't mean that women are not as capable. It just means that they may not have had that opportunity. And so what I'm encouraging you today is to not hesitate to take those actions to help you develop your own skills and anticipate the challenges that may lie before you as an academic leader and as a woman, and to allow you to be one of those 1 in 200,000 that reaches the very top. So I'd like to spend the last few minutes moving away from broader topics a lot, like skill development and the need for certain types of skills in academia, to speak first to the women in the audience and then to the men in the audience with some practical advice for you. So first of all, women, challenge your expectations. Many of us were raised in environments without parents or other professional women around us to serve as models. That does not mean you cannot move into those positions. So you need to challenge your own expectations about what is possible for you. It's very, very important for you to have your own identified goals, whether they mirror the goals of your family or the community in which you're raised, or whether they are your own personal goals that are distinctive from that. But it's important that you challenge your expectations about what you can do. Secondly, I want to say, women, can be just as discriminatory as men. So take time to support other women's efforts. Don't hesitate to praise someone in public if they've done something that's positive, that's successful. We aren't competing with one another. It is important that we move forward collectively. And I think that when you praise another person, when you call out another person's efforts and their successes, there will be a time in the future when they will do the same for you. And that's critically important for success and for the evaluation processes that are inevitable in the academic environment, whether that's at the faculty level or whether it's at the administrative level. I also want to say, don't be afraid to be confident, to show your confidence. If you think you can do something, that is really okay. And you don't need to hide your competence. And you can show and share your confidence in your ability to solve problems, in your ability to help others, in your ability to master technical tasks. Be candidly confident in public, not just in private, but in public. It's important to attend to what's often referred these days to as bystander responding. And what I mean by that is that if you see a situation where there is a colleague who is discriminating against a woman, find diplomatic ways to say something at the time. If a woman voices an opinion about something that really expresses a good idea and someone takes that as their own, or if someone criticizes someone because of the way they look, the way they made a statement rather than the content of the statement, don't hesitate to call those out. Don't hesitate to call out microaggressions. And you don't need to be aggressive in the process, but what you want to do is to say, oh, I think her idea was a good idea. Could you elaborate on that? And bringing the person back into the light, into attention, into the conversation, if they've been dismissed or disrespected. Those types of things make a tremendous difference, not just for the person that you're assisting, but actually for the community in which you're building. Because people will come to learn to behave in a respectful way with one another in your presence. And that's very important because that leads to greater success, greater communication, greater collaboration. So I think if your university offers it, take bystander training. Very helpful. I said before, communicating directly is important. And we don't have to apologize for our ideas. We don't have to skirt around ideas. Being able to state your message clearly and succinctly is very helpful in the academic environment. People know what you want, how you want it, how you think you might solve something. Saying those things very directly is important. And I'm calling women out on this because I think we tend to be much more circuitous in our communication, more hesitant in our communication. And one of the things that you learn as a leader is that, frankly, that wastes a lot of time. Let's talk openly and directly, and everyone is your potential partner. And so speaking up and communicating directly is important. Now, I just said speaking up. As I was growing up, that was one thing. I might have known the answer to a question, but I always hesitated to raise my hand in class. You know, I hesitated to be the first person to give the answer to someone. And I've learned as I've matured with age, there is no loss of dignity in being honest and being straightforward. And so speak up for yourself, because you might have a better idea than others, but if the other ideas are heard, what do you think is going to happen? The business, the organization, the academic institution are going to go with those other ideas. So don't be afraid to speak up and express your opinion, to share your ideas. And if you have creative solutions, don't be afraid to express them. It doesn't mean that your community of leaders or your other fellow faculty members will always agree with you, but at least they will have heard an alternative idea. And that's really important over time. Again, it generates a context in which open communication can unfold and people can be transparent and are willing to share with one another. It is through these types of communication processes that having diverse leadership teams produces greater innovation. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, greater success economically as well. I will also say, this is especially to the junior women in the audience, that you don't want to let anyone talk over you when you're speaking. If you haven't finished your thought or your idea, say, I'd like to finish, please. I'm almost done. Let me share the rest of my thought or idea. And that shows that you think that your ideas are important, and you think that then sharing these with others is equally important. This is one of those things that women often let happen, have other people speak over them. And I just suggest that you practice a few phrases that will afford you the opportunity next time when someone is speaking over you, or you haven't quite finished your thought or idea, to be able to bring that to fruition, because others are not going to be able to fully respect that, to fully act on that, if they haven't heard the entirety of your thought or idea. Finally, we as women are prone to smile a lot. And when you're in the middle of a conflict, you know, smiling can mean something very different than what it means when you're chatting with your friends. And so I have learned that a smile is an important communication. And if you don't mean it, don't do it. But if you mean it, if you're happy with something that was said, if you are engaging with a person in a very positive way, don't hesitate to smile. But if someone is disrespecting you, disagreeing with you, talking over with you, doing microaggressions, that's not a time to smile. That's not a time to be happy. That implies that you're glossing over what they say, or that's not impacting you, or that you don't care, or you think they're right when they're not. So it's important to use your smile as part of your communication pattern. And the other thing that I want to say directly to the women in the audience is it is important to build collaborations with other women, to get to know the other women who are leaders, to get to know your fellow faculty members. That knowing at a deeper level gives you a greater sense of safety. It's easier to show your confidence. It's easier to speak candidly and directly when you're in situations where there are more men than women, which is often the case in many of these academic leadership positions. Well, I've spoken to women and given some practical advice for women. So now I'd like to turn to the men in the audience, because really, to make changes to enhance the success of your university, to enhance the success of your business, it's important to include everyone in the population who has good ideas, who's confident, who has the potential of leadership capacity. If you want to alter academia, then it's important to produce a workplace environment that's filled with equity opportunities. So men, what does this mean? It means to check your attitude, be less sexist. Don't assume that your ideas are better than someone just because that person happens to be a woman. It means that you need to take time to listen to the views of women just as you do to the views of men. That you need to be accepting of alternative approaches that women might suggest, because it is common for women to use different approaches to problem solving than to men. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. In some cases, it may be better, but you won't know unless you actually listen to the women. And if you have opportunities to try out these alternative strategies, give them a try. Show them the respect that you would want if you had a novel idea or an alternative perspective. You want to check your own expectations. You know, men are raised in a culture where there are certain roles that are very common for women, and we quickly gravitate to those. I have really a wonderful colleague, a dear friend of mine now. And when I was in the process of my training for my doctorate, I do remember at times when I felt he spoke to me like maybe I could have been his daughter. He was speaking down to me. And then as he developed respect for me, it was more like a greater familiarity, more like, oh, how you might treat a wife, for example. And it was finally only sort of to the third stage in our relationship where he really treated me as a colleague. And he saw me first for my ideas and my thoughts and my opinions rather than my gender. And so I'm encouraging you to challenge your own expectations about what women can be, what women can do, and how men should behave with women in a professional setting. Just as I said with women, it's important to build bystander training. It's important for men to do the same, because I will guarantee you that if you take the time to stand up for a woman who's not being respected in a communication, someone speaking over that person, they're being disrespected, whatever, and a simple statement like, please let her finish her thought, or I'd like to hear the rest of her thought. Something like that can make a tremendous difference in the long run. You have an ally when you stand up for someone in that kind of position. And you never know when allies are going to be important. They're critical to forming really strong collaborative teams to be able to master some of the enormous challenges that we face in academia these days. Just as I said, don't let people talk over you to women. Men, don't talk over women. Let them finish their ideas. And if you do, just know, quickly apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. You weren't quite finished yet. Be sure and let that person finish. And even acknowledging what you're doing helps you become more aware of that tendency. It is valuable if you have the opportunity to highlight and support the points that women are making, to call out the value that they're bringing to a conversation. And again, in doing so, you create an equitable foundation for communication and problem solving, as we are often faced with in the academic environment, and quite frankly, in progressive industry as well. So this kind of approach can serve you not just in academia, but in other contexts as well. And then finally, I think by doing that, you want to build a reputation for fairness. You want women to see you as fair and reasonable in the way that you are treating them. And in doing so, you're building allies for the future. It doesn't take very many experiences in which you are checking yourself by not speaking over someone, using a bystander approach and say, no, please let her finish with her idea, that you are, when appropriate, calling out really good ideas on the part of women, that you develop a reputation. And that reputation is not just among the men as being fair, but the other half of the population, the women as well. And they will, when they have opportunities to support you, whether it's as you climb up the academic ladder, whether you're climbing up the administrative leadership ladder, they will remember that. And so I think to make the transformations that we want in academia, for women to move into leadership, we have a call for action, not just for women in society, but for men as well. And it in no way diminishes, but rather enhances the caliber and the likely success of men in society, just as it does for women in society. And with that, I think I will close. Again, I want to express my deep appreciation for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you, for the kind invitation to come before you. And I wish you great success in your meeting. Having reviewed the agenda, it's a very exciting agenda, and I'm sure quite successful. I wish I could be there in person with you, and due to other professional conflicts, I was not able to do so. But I've most enjoyed spending this 45 minutes with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this insight. There are some applauses for the audience. Thank you very much for this insightful conference. We do have some questions. I don't know if we have still some minutes. Yes? Okay, so I will start just with one question from the audience. Arturo Mendez asks, the COVID contingency brought new models for jobs professionals and academic interaction. Has this marked any trends that may bring opportunity and equity for women leadership? What policies could or should be promoted?
Oh, I think this is such a wonderful opportunity because in a way, we've struggled so much with problems that are created by the COVID pandemic. But at the same time, it's created a whole new way of doing business. And for those of you like me who are on Zoom all day long, everybody on the screen is equal. And the guidelines that I mentioned to you are so important. On Zoom, on these multi-person calls, it's really clear when somebody speaks over another. And so you learn to pace yourself. When someone has a good idea, you learn to support that idea. And so I think that this past year and a half, has been an important learning opportunity for us. I do think Zoom is a big gender equalizer. The women are the same size as men on the screen. And so it's a great question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much. And one last question. In your knowledge, how can we change the narrative for students to empower female students during and after higher education?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yes. How can we change the narrative for students to empower female students during and after higher education?
Well, I think this is a wonderful idea. I think that at each opportunity where there's a transition, and this is true whether we're talking about students or we're talking about faculty or we're talking about administrators, whenever there's an opportunity for a change, a student might be leaving the university, the student might be transitioning to graduate school or to a new stage in graduate school, for example, that is an opportunity to talk about some of the things that I spoke today. I guess I would say the number one thing that we can do is to not be afraid to discuss expectations of success for women. When you grow up in an environment where there aren't as many women models for what you want to be or do, these conversations serve as the substitute for those models. Thank you.
Sandra Brown, for your excellent participation and, which is now finished the second day of activities at this venue. We remind you that to live the full CIIE experience through the app, there you can join additional sessions that we have prepared for you.
Thank you, and don't forget to check the agenda for master events. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Time, Mexico time zone, with the Global Learning Panel, sharing the vision for online internationalization. Have a nice day.
The clock is ticking. Today's world is not the same as the one we used to know. In the face of new challenges, we must continue looking forward to find the best solutions so no one is left behind. We have to rethink. Rebuild. Redesign. While we all have a collective vision that allows us to see beyond our limitations, we will continue bringing new ideas to overcome new and old problems, inspiring people to construct solid networks based on social participation, creating environments beyond our reality, and visiting places we did not even imagine before. We are innovation. We chose this vocation to teach, guide, and inspire. Paradoxically, while we do this, we continue learning. We team up in the teaching-learning process to trigger innovation. We are teachers, and we are determined to educate no matter what. At school, home, any place, and with any platform. With one or multiple audiences, we will continue to strengthen the teaching-learning process, innovating and shaping the new era of education.